It may have seemed like an impossible idea to use first-person view drones from close by, right next to the Russian air bases, which were hundreds and thousands of kilometers deep inside Russian territory. Yet it worked, and by most accounts it worked pretty well. This video will go a step further and explain why such a plan was almost destined to work, and why Russia was in fact mostly powerless and couldn't have done much to prevent it. Ukraine had attacked Russian air bases before using missiles and medium-sized winged drones in direct attacks. Some bases were hundreds of kilometers away from Ukraine. Over time, however, Russian air defenses became more organized and better at detecting and intercepting such threats. The Russian challenge remained: how to protect all potential targets in Russia. Consider the vast number of traffic infrastructure nodes, industrial sites, factories, depots, army barracks, air bases, naval bases, etc. That's tens of thousands of medium and high-value targets. Just the Russian air forces operate around 110 airfields scattered across Russia's vast territory. While Russia possesses one of the world's most potent air defense networks, it isn't configured to directly protect such a large number of fixed sites. Many batteries listed are army formations, tasked with protecting frontline army units instead of guarding fixed sites in Russia. The listed figures represent batteries, with each short-range system typically including a few vehicles, each with its own radar and the ability to engage a few targets simultaneously. Note that these figures are mostly pre-war estimates. Russia has since both lost and produced some SAM systems. The Air Force uses the Pantsir air defense system, specifically designed for terminal defense against threats that evade larger systems. S-400 is of course useless against the Quadcopter. Pantsir units were plausibly present at attacked Russian bases. Still, given the sheer number of high-value sites across Russia, most bases plausibly had only a few Pantsir vehicles at best, not even a full battery. But modern air defenses aren't necessarily suited to handle the type of attack Ukraine launched. Ukraine said it used 117 small quadcopters across 4 locations, but images of trucks point to 30 to 60 drones per truck per airbase. A 2020 Russian report highlighted deficiencies in systems like Tor, Tunguska and Pantsir against certain targets. Field tests showed their radars detected small UAVs at only 3 to 4 kilometers away. Even when detection occurred in time to fire, the drone's low signatures often didn't trigger missiles' warhead fuses. The report noted that Pantsir's radar detection range for small UAVs is nearly equal to its missile's minimum engagement range. Since drones continue moving, missiles often fail to arm in time and can't detonate so close. A rumored 2018 account from Syria had one Pantsir firing 13 missiles to intercept 3 fairly simple drones. Makarenko's report also cited a 2020 test where 4 Pantsir vehicles fired their guns at a slow-winged target drone larger than a quadcopter. Multiple salvos were fired, none hit. The Tunguska, using the same guns, was tested on mini-target drones about the size of large quadcopters from 3 kilometers away. Hitting a single drone required 4,000 to 13,000 rounds, yet Tunguska carries only 1,800 rounds, Pantsir 1,400. It's thus likely that against quadcopters, effective reach for a quick shoot-down was much less, possibly under half a mile. So such gun systems could have covered only a small part of an airbase. And multiple drones used likely meant that only a few were shot down in time. Russia said it repelled attacks in 3 out of 5 bases targeted. Days later, that partially checked out as satellite images showed little to no damage at Dyagilovo base, and Ukrainka base was possibly not hit at all, as the drone carrier truck appears to have exploded en route. Damage at Ivanova base is yet to be confirmed, but footage shows some drones did reach the planes there. The bottom line seems to be Russia did manage to shoot down and/or jam a fair number of drones at all bases and possibly neutralized most at Dyagilovo. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was some malfunction on the Ukrainian part. There are rumors that drones from one truck started flying out while the truck was in motion. Ukraine said 117 drones were used, which possibly accounts for the truck releasing drones in motion and another truck exploding prematurely. Ukraine said 41 planes were hit. It's plausible some were hit by multiple drones. But still, evidently Russia managed to intercept or neutralize some. The 2 Russian bases closer to the front could have simply been more heavily protected. Could other weapons have done better? Lasers and microwave emitters are often mentioned for counter-drone roles, but no country has deployed them beyond concept-proof units. The technology isn't ready for mass deployment. Russia may have a few prototypes, but there are thousands of potential sites needing protection within its territory. The drones were launched from trucks parked relatively close to their targets. At the Belaya Airbase, for example, they were launched just 4 miles away. Laden FPV drones typically cruise at 100 to 150 km per hour, meaning they could reach the base in about 4 minutes. But airbase terminal defenses were and still are geared towards intercepting low-flying cruise missiles and high-altitude bombs, both larger than even the target drones discussed in previous reports. Cruise missiles like the Tomahawk still usually travel at 30 to 100 meters in altitude, making them more detectable. In contrast, FPV drones can fly just 1 or 2 meters above ground and adjust their speed. The Ukrainian drones plausibly flew slowly enough, around 50 km per hour, to avoid detection by radars around the base, which are programmed with threshold filters to reduce false alarms from nearby car traffic or large birds. A slow-moving drone might not trigger those filters. Though quadcopters seem loud when overhead, even in quiet areas they are not audible to the average person until they are about 200 meters away, so around those airbases there was likely not enough time to respond effectively. Drone footage from the attack shows some drones leisurely selecting targets, suggesting little interference. Most base security forces are stationed at the perimeter fence, too far away to shoot at drones over the apron. Once drones pass the perimeter, they faced minimal risk from rifle fire, as ground crews are generally unarmed. Moreover, it's unfeasible to station armed troops every 100 meters around every base. Ukrainian drones were launched from containers on the backs of transport trucks. Unsuspecting drivers were simply instructed when and where to park, often at rest stops near roads. All targeted bases had the same issue: nearby civilian settlements and large roads. That is standard. No air force is wealthy or paranoid enough to build all its bases far from populated areas. Even United States Air Force bases would face similar vulnerabilities under such an attack. All 5 targeted air bases had regional roads with normal traffic and several villages or cities within 4 miles. Constantly monitoring trucks around those areas was impossible due to the high volume of everyday transport activity. While the growing use of quadcopter drones theoretically made such an attack foreseeable, telling any air force in 2023 to construct entirely new bases in remote locations with wide security perimeters would have been met with total resistance. Even if approved, such projects take a decade, not a few years. As a result, detecting the launch trucks before they began deploying drones was nearly impossible. Most drones left the trucks within a minute, leaving almost no time for a meaningful response. So once the drones reached the parked bombers, what could be done? For Russia, nothing. It doesn't use shelters for its bombers. To be fair, China uses a mix of no shelters and simple roof shelters without walls for their bombers. In the United States, the single B-2 base has about 15 shelters, and B-1B bases have some 30 dedicated shelters between them, enough for combat-ready bombers in each unit, while others undergo maintenance. The United States doesn't use shelters for its older B-52 bombers. One false claim is that Russia doesn't use shelters because of the New START treaty and bomber inspections by adversary planes and satellites. The United States clearly uses shelters, and such inspections were announced beforehand. Besides, Russia suspended participation in that treaty in 2023. Certainly, if some Russian bombers had been inside shelters behind closed doors, small FPV drones could not have reached them. But realistically, drones would have simply targeted other planes left in the open. Even the United States does not have enough funds or paranoia to protect all their bombers. On the other hand, the United States has not been at war for 3 years, so Russia had time to prepare. In theory, Russia could have spent a few $100 million to build simple shelters for nearly all bombers, but it chose not to. Since the war began, larger winged drones have flown from Ukraine, damaging or destroying some bombers. Russia likely believed its air defenses had improved enough over the years to minimize that risk. They did not anticipate quadcopter-style drones launched just miles away. Had they might have installed anti-drone netting over parking areas. similar to nets covering some trenches and roads in Ukraine. While this would have complicated the attack and possibly entangled some drones, the purpose of an airbase is to launch planes. Without hard shelters with walls and doors, gaps always remain. Therefore, even extensive netting would not have provided adequate protection. So far, Ukrainian security agency and Russia's Alexei Rogozin suggested that the drones flew on basic autopilot without using GPS to reach the airbases. Then, a combination of AI recognition and piloting via internet connection provided by regular cell phone SIM cards completed the mission. Also, drone operators seem to have been stationed outside Russia, using internet connections to issue commands to the quadcopters. That's fairly new, and this strike may have ushered an era of more proliferated usage of such distant control even for the smallest of drones. There would be little protection against said method. Airbases likely had some radio jammers on standby, but even if used, jammers cannot disrupt autonomous drones flying using their own sensors. With onboard cameras and computers recognizing targets, drones could operate effectively. The target type helped as well. Bombers are large, unsheltered, and difficult to conceal. Russia did try using decoys, drawing planes on aprons or placing rubber tires on real planes to alter their appearances, but these might fool low-resolution satellites, not a camera 50 meters away from a decoy or from a real plane. Cell phone signals may have been turned off or jammed at the last moment in some bases, but evidently not in all of them, as 2 out of 4 bases attacked saw significantly higher damage rates. Russia can't keep cell phone signals turned off as a precaution since towns are right nearby. Had bases been far from residential areas, this might have been prevented. Also, data links were likely used only for the last minute or so to lower detection chances. Ukraine likely used encrypted mobile internet traffic to assist targeting. Otherwise, we wouldn't have those first-person drone footage. Intelligence gathering also played a role. Spies might have relayed fresh airplane locations, but crucially, Ukraine has access to commercial satellite imagery, buying daily recon passes. Russian mill blogger Rybar alleged somewhat increased satellite overflights before the attack. Russia could do little to stop such intelligence gathering. Finally, how did trucks get close undetected? While Russia focused on detecting threats crossing the Russian-Ukrainian border, Ukraine took a different, smarter approach, sending drone parts into Russia through indirect routes, possibly via Kazakhstan or similar countries. With countless border crossings and heavy traffic, tracking every car is impossible. Even if some parts were discovered, they would be ordinary enough not to reveal the true operation. Once in Russia, everything was assembled on-site in warehouses, custom trailer sheds with fake roofs, and the drones themselves. Some parts may have even been 3D printed locally. Trucks were sourced within Russia. The attack materials were thus mostly produced inside Russia, making them untraceable as hostile. China or the United States would have faced similar challenges against such an attack that was destined to succeed, and the implications of it, security-wise, will be felt for years to come. Being an attack on nuclear-carrying platforms, there's even a chance Russia might again threaten a nuclear response. And remember, Binkov may talk about war, but only real peace can bring us all together.